Who should the 49ers pay more? Deebo Samuel or Nick Bosa?
I think Nick Bosa is. I think that's what the market's going to indicate. I mean, I think right now the wide receiver prices are skyrocketing because right now you're seeing the young wide receivers getting paid, but that next crop of edge guys, it's Brian Burns, it's Nick Bosa. Those guys are coming up.
That's true.
That market's going to balloon. I mean, it's already neck and neck now. That next group, you've got Nick Bosa, Burns, I believe. What's the guy in Washington? The edge rusher in Washington.
Chase, whatever.
Yeah. There's like two other guys that are out there. That market's going to balloon up, and I think it's going to surpass the wide receiver market. Right now, you're just seeing there's a dearth of young wide receivers, and it's causing the market to go up. But when those young edge rushers, when they hit the market, I think it's going to surpass. I think it's going to go higher than 30.
It's possible because right now I think wide receiver just surpassed edge rusher and offensive tackle as like the second highest paid on average. Yes, I believe that it just happened, which is interesting.
And the other part of it too is, remember, I think that the COVID years kind of slowed it down a little bit, slowed the market down a little bit. So now we're just getting out of it. Yes. So now you're really going to start to see those things, kick back up again. It kind of probably sucked for guys like Kittle and Warner that got paid in the middle, or a little bit of the aftermath of that, and they probably could have gotten more had their contracts been up now.
Let me make the argument for paying Deebo more. I mean, I first of all, I watched a very interesting video on YouTube by Jackson Kruger Sports. Shout out to Jackson.
I watched the same thing.
Really interesting video, and it had a lot of it confirmed a lot of my prior assumptions, which I think why I liked it so much. But there was a lot of, basically what he did was try to find a wins over replacement stat for football. And what he did was basically try to find, he took points per drive for each team and also took their PFF grades at certain positions and stuff like that and tried to figure out what positions actually contributed the most wins. And his conclusion was that wide receiver and tight end, those receivers are the second most important position group on the team after quarterback. And then actually edge rush is way at the bottom, which really surprised me. And I don't know if it's true, because it's been a truism for 100 years in football that you win the game. The game is won in the trenches. The game is won in the trenches, and the edge rusher is the most important trench player on defense. Well, it seems like maybe as the game is becoming more spread out and the ball comes out of the quarterback's hands quicker, that the game is won less and less in the trenches, and more with players like Deebo and Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp, who can get the ball right on the screen pass and really threaten the defense. That's what and I think maybe the trend this offseason is we're seeing that. Now, pendulum could swing next year if the Super Bowl winner has a bunch of great pass rushers, as of course. But I'm starting to think that the trend is less and less trench play and more space play, wide receivers, coverage, even running backs.
Well, my argument would be, what happened in the last two Super Bowls, and why did those teams lose? Well, Kansas City lost because their entire offensive line was out, right? Or at least half of them. So they didn't have good offensive line play.
True.
And they were facing very good defensive line play.
True.
Conversely, what happened in the past Super Bowl? Joe Burrow was running for his life and didn't have protection. So
that's a great point. Could I just say that what I think you could also argue is that the Bengals and the Chiefs in that game had dreadful offensive lines. You can't have a dreadful offensive line and win a Super Bowl. You need a decent offensive line. You need a decent, and those two teams didn't have it. Do you need to have the highest paid defensive end in the league to win a Super Bowl? I guess is my question. I guess we'll see if you can do it paying $30 million for a wide receiver.
I don't know that you need to have the highest paid, but I think you do need an edge guy. But I think you also need offensive players too, right? the kind of, and I don't want to go too up, but the annoying thing really with this whole thing is like they could actually afford to pay both these guys. Like, there's a way.
Theoretical, college style discussion.
Yeah, but I'm still gonna go with the edge guy. I watched the Jackson Kruger thing. I think it was an interesting video. However, I think there's some issues with it. Number one, he's using PFF stuff.
That's true. That's true.
Number two, I think the wide receiver and quarterback stuff. He in his formula, the quarterback counted for the most points and thus the most win percentage for a game. And wide receiver and quarterbacks are very much correlate with each other. I think, look at the difference between Cooper Kupp's year when Matt Stafford came in versus prior years. So I can see a lot of that wide receiver production actually being really the quarterback, and then your quarterback is tied to the offensive line, and not just.
It's vice versa in Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel. I'm not saying you can't say that Jimmy made Deebo better. You know what I mean?
No. And I think that's when
but it goes both ways, and if it's a case by case basis, for sure, is a spectrum.
I put out a tweet. That's actually a pro argument for Deebo. Like, hey, look, I had 1,400 yards with Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what happened with Cooper Kupp and Jared Goff. Same thing. Anyway,
and the other thing is, and I think this is the other thing, right? The quarterback, we can all agree, is the most important position. Right, and I think we've talked about it with this team. What do you need that guy on the field? So you can't have him hurt. So that's where the offensive line really, really puts it. Like, you don't want him taking more hits than he needs to take because he needs to be on the field.
But hold on, like I'm coming back to like the Bengals. Everyone said the Bengals should have taken Penei Sewell, but they got it right and took Jamar Chase and kind of went against conventional football wisdom, which I think is why the wide receiver market is going the way it is. They kind of proved that, look, you can have the worst pass protection in the league, which they did. They led the league in sacks allowed, and they still went to the Super Bowl. And then they spent this offseason plugging up their line, and now it's gone from god-awful to serviceable, and now that team looks like a Super Bowl contender. No doubt. So I'm just saying, I think real quick, with Bosa, the Niners have proven they can have a top 5 defense without him. Without Deebo, that offense would probably be bottom half of the league.
Well, here's the thing. I'll fight back on that with Bosa. Like, if you remember when Bosa wasn't there, they had a top 5 defense. But what happens when they played one of those elite offensive, their defense turned to total crap. Like, remember when Josh Allen came to town, and where was that 49ers pass rush then? Because they didn't really have a guy that could just win and go get the quarterback. Their sacks and their defense came from effort plays and playing solid defense. When you face a dude, you need other dudes on defense to
dude theory.
Yeah.
Dude theory.
So I think it to an extent, but ultimately, team defense is only going to carry you so far, and sooner or later, you need a player and you need an edge guy to just win for you.
Well, it's going to be. I'm not done with this discussion. Another factor is the injury factor. If you're going to hold this, not you. If the 49ers are going to hold injuries against Deebo, hey man, you missed some time, this and that. Deebo hasn't had surgery. I mean, Deebo's injuries haven't been that serious. I mean, they've recurred, but he's broken bones. He's pulled muscles. Bosa's had serious injuries. Bosa's missed, a season in the NFL, a season in college, a season in high school. That's also something to consider, not just position.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
I would definitely have some reservations, and I'm a pro Bosa guy. Paying Bosa all that money, I mean, it might be one of those deals where I probably would want him to sit and show me another year more than I would want Deebo to, and I'm totally willing to. I want Bosa around and all that, but because he's been hurt 1 year, then injured. Injured 1 year, then plays, but plays outstanding when he plays. But I think it's something to bring up with both players, right? Like, but I don't think it would inhibit me from signing either one. I definitely would bring it up in contract talks, but like that, I would be more inclined to pay Deebo now and make Bosa wait. There's also, I think I think there's more. You also have more tools at your disposal with Bosa with his 5th-year option, and then, I mean, you have the franchise tag with either one. But
okay, HR says, is it ineptitude, internal conflict, or prioritizing profit that has and is most preventing the 49ers from making the moves to get us another ring? I'm going to say ineptitude that they still haven't picked a quarterback, that it's year 6 and they're still having like a quarterback drama. Ineptitude that instead of building around their Super Bowl window, which is Deebo, they're thinking about trading him. I would say ineptitude. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say ineptitude, but in the grand scheme of things, like, we're not talking about them like they're a mess, like, right? They've gotten to a point where they've gotten to the NFC Championship, so don't take this as like
they drafted Deebo.
Yeah, don't take this like they're a garbage organization, but
no,
there are things to criticize with them where there's obvious moves that could have been made to have a better team, because right, the ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl. They haven't won the Super Bowl, so
they've done a good job assembling a defense. They've done a good job assembling a supporting cast on offense, especially the weapons.
Yeah.
They are on year 6 and haven't figured out the quarterback position. That's wild. And that's a big one. It's a big one.
And they could have had it figured out, but they
could have had Stafford. They could have had Brady. They could have had Mahomes. They fucked up at the biggest position, and it's having a major effect.
And they could have had a decision or this year, had they played Lance, they would have known if he's real or not. Because if they played him this year, they would have a good idea of whether this kid can play or not. Because right, it would have been right there. And then if you couldn't, you could have, like, a third of the league's quarterbacks were available. So if Lance bombed, you could have made a move this offseason and just got rid of him.
True. Justin says, what if you could trade Deebo for pick 4 and pair Bosa with Thibodeau the next 5 years? Why would trade Deebo for pick 4 and pair Bosa, or trade Bosa for pick 4 and replace him with Thibodeau?